Welcome to the Vision CreatHER Podcast, from corporate to creator, with your hosts, Pamela Martino and Debbie Williams.
Debbie, here we are, another episode of Vision CreatHER, from corporate to creator. So we thought we've been talking and talking and talking about real estate, and I'm a licensed real estate agent or realtor for North Carolina, South Carolina. You do real estate in Pennsylvania, and we thought this was the perfect time. We're 2026. Happy New Year to our listeners and viewers, and just to give people strategy, right? And so wanting to get started, wanting to do something different, wanting to get into real estate, and just not knowing how or when or where to start. So we are here to hopefully debunk some myths and open up some your mind to start, right? To just
Yes.
start. And that was part of what we talked about in our first episode. How do we
Yes.
get here? And we decided to just start.
Yes.
So here we go. Here we are. So, again, you do some real estate ventures in Pennsylvania. Let's talk about some of the things that you're working on and to
Sure.
open that up, and we'll go from there.
Sure. First of all, Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like, comment, and
Yeah.
subscribe. We love
Yeah.
your comments. And tell your friends about what we're doing. But today is going to be a very hot topic because I get this actually often, and I don't really pay much attention. But there are a lot of folks out there that are sitting on the bench that would love to get into real estate and have no idea. It actually scares them to get into real estate. So, like Pamela said, we're going to debunk some of the things that are causing you to be afraid to get into real estate. Like, for example, like how did we get here? Like, how did I get into real estate? Right? How did that whole war happen? It was back in the early 1900s, 19, the 1990s. At the time, my ex-husband said to me, I asked him, I said, what's your vision for your life? And he said, I want to be a landlord. He said, I grew up with terrible landlords. And I always said, one day I'm going to be a landlord. And I said, okay, bet. I said, I'm going to help you. So I went and got my real estate license at the time. And I became a licensed real estate agent. I got my license and I started learning everything I could about real estate. And I came across a book called, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And,
Hmm.
and I absolutely love that book. That book
Hmm.
really just shifted my mindset about wealth and wealth building and how real estate is definitely a key asset to have to build real estate. And so what I did once I got my license, I said, okay, I'm going to work with. We bought our first home as a result of me having my license, but also I started to learn about investing, and I said, okay, if I'm going to be a real estate agent, I want to serve only investors, and I'm just going to sit on a sideline and watch them and learn from them. And then I start joining real estate investment groups and start learning from them. It was just a wealth of learning out there. And then also I started taking training courses about, how to evaluate real estate and just all the things that it took to get my first deal. My goal was just, I'm going to get my first deal. And so I did that, and I work with real estate investors. And before you know it, I was a real estate investor myself. My real estate license expired, and I just continued on real estate investing. So that's how I did it, Pamela. How did you do it?
That's awesome. That's the beautiful thing is, even though your real estate license expired, you didn't let it expire your dreams and hopes to continue to pursue.
Absolutely.
You still went forward, and here you are today, even though you're not licensed, you are still pursuing your dreams and you're building your real estate
Absolutely.
business.
To God be the glory.
Yes, amen. So for me, I got started in 2008, right? When everything was going down the tubes. And I didn't sell my first house until 2012.
Oh,
But
wow.
I got into it because, as we talked about in our first podcast, I was in corporate America doing some contracting work and it was feast or famine. It was, the company I was working for at the time. You get on, and they would hire people before they even had the project solidified. And then they realized that they didn't get funded or whatever the case might be, and then they went and laid all those people off. And
Mhm.
so it was these events that would happen every 6, 12, 18 months. And so I thought to myself, these people have full control over my money. And so I met a lady that I was working with on one of those opportunities, and she was a real estate agent. And she was like, "You would be a great real estate agent." I was like, "Really?" Anyway, fast forward, got my real estate license. Did not sell my first house until 2012. And I was about to give it up because I mean, anybody who's in real estate knows it's a lot of money, fees and MLS dues and just all the things. And part of selling houses helps pay for those expenses. And so because I wasn't generating any revenue during that time, I thought my output is more than my outlay is more than what I'm bringing in. So someone recommended to get on a team at the company that I was with, the real estate brokerage firm that I was with. So that was a game changer because I just needed to understand the pattern. And I knew if I could get the pattern of what to do first, second, third, fifth, tenth, that I could do this on my own. So that introduction into the team helped me really kind of get my footing. From there, I stayed on his team maybe a year, and then went off and I started doing my on my own. And then I started thinking, you know what? I love helping people. That's why I'm in this business. I love helping people. But I also thought I wanted to get into investing myself. So I wanted to have another stream of income and an offshoot of just being a real estate agent. So there was some new construction townhomes that were being built in Charlotte. And again, one of those things where I wanted to do it. I was scared. I was like, I've never done this before. But it seemed to be the least amount of risk because it was new construction, right? So went to the new construction. They were building this townhome, brand new. I went for it, and that was in 2013. And I've
Wow.
been going ever since. So my real estate journey started in 2013 in terms of investing when I purchased my first townhome. That townhome is in a very prominent area in Charlotte and it stays rented. And so I never have any issues. I had one issue with the tenant. She stayed too long and
Uh-oh.
she like pretty much ruined my unit. So I had to, redo the whole thing, but it is absolutely beautiful. And I'm very proud of the properties that I purchased. And I often say, if I can't live there, or if I would not put my family there, then I'm not going to rent it to someone else. So anyway,
That's
it's
good.
a beautiful place, and so I purchased another property in Pittsburgh, which is where my hometown. And I bought another townhouse in, I don't know, 2015, I think it was. And then I bought a beach house in 2021 during the pandemic down in Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
And that's doing well as well. I did release or sell my townhouse in Pittsburgh 2018. So I kept that for like 3 years. Kind of have a little bit of regret that I did that because most people say, well, hold on to your assets, don't sell them. Um, but yeah, no worries. There's other opportunities.
Plenty of them. Plenty of them. No, that was great. That's great. So let's talk about first deal. Well, you kind of talked about yours. I'll piggyback on your first deal. So my first deal, well, besides my home, and I wasn't working at the time when I did it. I was pregnant with twins at the time. So so I was an unemployed brokey out here in these streets taking all these risks because I had a husband at the time, and he was my cushion. And I thank God for him because I made his life crazy taking all these risks. But I just saw the bigger vision. I saw his vision. Actually, it was his vision, and I was willing to go all in. So the our actually the first quote unquote investment was our first home. We bought it for peanuts. We bought it for about 150, and then when I sold it 18 years later, I sold it at a discount for about three and some change. And
Mm.
so and then so that was the first one. And then 2 years later, we bought our first property. Our first property was an apartment building, this huge apartment building in New Jersey. It was huge to us because it was in a beat up area, run down, and it was I just saw the vision. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. It was a dump, but I was like, oh, even our house that we bought, it was a dump. It's like from the movie This House or something. I can't remember. Tom Hanks was in the movie, but our house, the wind would blow right through the front door. And I was like, oh, this is our first home. And I was like, but we totally renovated it and made it up. So when I saw the building, the apartment buildings, I was like, wow, this is great. This is beautiful. It was a dump. It was in the hood. Well, at the time, it was in the hood. That was the hood at the time. And so I got it from this guy. He had it for a while and he was ready to get rid of it. And so he was actually a broker. He was a broker. I bought it from a broker. It was an on-market listing, and he saw I was a rookie. I didn't know what I was doing, but I took all my training material and I just used it, and I just spoke the language that I learned from all the trainings. So I talked to the guy and I negotiated. I got even with both houses, our home and our apartment, I got some seller financing. I was doing everything that I didn't care. I had nothing to lose. I was out there hustling, and I negotiated him covering closing costs, and I got some seller financing, and I was able to get financing. I just followed the script that I learned in my training, and ultimately, my ex husband was like, you bought this piece of dump, this dump. It was 6 apartments, two retail spaces, 3 garages. It had a phone at the time on the property. It had billboards, so it had multiple streams of income. And I said, "Oh, this is wonderful. This dump. This is wonderful. I just saw the vision." I'm like, "Don't you see the vision? Your vision. Don't you see it?" And he was so disgusted. But over time, he saw the vision. I mean, because we took that thing from making peanuts to doing actually quite well. And he actually recently just sold it, and he made a mega of, and we bought it for like 150, 160. He made so much more, 10 to,
Wow.
it was like a 10 to 1. Um, the value of what we bought it for, what we sold it for, what he sold it for rather. But he saw the vision, and I bankrupt his 401k. Well, he was working at the post office. I bankrupt his his account to it wasn't a lot, but I bankrupted. He said, "You took all my money." I said, "Don't you see the vision?" But he got all his money back in
Yeah.
spades, and it was a blessing. Eventually, like I said, he this was his dream, this was his
Yeah.
vision, and once he realized, wow, my dream has come true. And so we got it, and it was, that building was a blessing. It was my cutting my teeth
Mm.
for being a landlord or property owner of small apartment buildings. So that was my
Yeah.
first one.
Well, let's give our listeners like the one, two, threes. So someone who wants to get in, they want to buy a property, they just don't know where to start. And let's talk through, because you're not necessarily confined to just your area, right? So
Mhm.
like I said, I'm in Charlotte, although I'm from Pittsburgh, so I kind of know the market there because my mom still is there. I bought a townhouse there, so that was an easy acquisition for me because I already knew the landscape. But somebody who's interested in getting in, right, and they want to get started, let's
Mhm.
again, let's debunk some of the things. So you don't have to buy a property in the area you live in. You can buy, anywhere in the US. And there's plenty of websites that people can go to. You can Google, you can use ChatGPT, you can use whatever, site or whatever where you go and do searches. But okay, so somebody finds a house. What should they may not have a lot of money, right? They may not have a lot of money to invest. What kind of recommendations would you offer to
Sure.
someone who wants to get started? Maybe you know, they don't have all the money to do the rehab or maybe the down payment. Like what can we offer our listeners? And I'll let you go first.
Sure, sure. So the first, like the Bible says, in all you're getting, get wisdom, right? So first thing, get wisdom, right? Don't enter that thing by yourself, or if you go by yourself, go with a lot of knowledge, because
Yeah.
knowledge is go, so get some training, um get some knowledge, get some training on what you're getting yourself into. So such as before you make your first deal, be around people who know more than you, right? Like you join real estate investment groups. There's a lot of people around there that can train you, or teach you the ropes, or get your feet wet into what you're doing, or hire a coach, get a coach that can walk you step by step, or join a cohort of people who do that now, and just going together. But like Pamela said, you don't have to be in your hometown. When we bought the building, it was 30 minutes away from us, probably about 30 minutes away. So I would suggest, if you do start where you can get to the place yourself, so you can see what's going on and see what's happening. Or if you have someone else can be your hands and feet for you. It's like Charlotte, like Pamela said, she had family members that lived there, so if you have someone that's on your team or on your side who can be your eyes and feet for you, what if you're not there, if you're not present. But get knowledge. That's the first thing I would tell you to get some knowledge, and then or get a coach or get a mentor, somebody who's going to hold your hand. And then you said 3 things, right, Pamela?
three, what, four, whatever, whatever, just give a one, two, three, four,
Yeah, one,
five.
two, three. So get
Yeah.
knowledge, right? Two, not only knowledge about what you're getting into, but knowledge of the risk and all the other stuff. Once you get that knowledge, just start going out looking out properties. Get with a realtor. Get with a realtor who specializes in investments, because what you're going to find, there's a different, and or get a realtor who has their own investments. So, like I said, I bought my property from a broker. This was his listing, and he walked me through a lot of the stuff I didn't even know. And so get with an agent that is investors themselves, or get with an agent that works strictly with investors, because that cut down on your learning as well. And then so start getting out there, get your feet wet, start looking at that properties. And the third thing I would say, put offers in, just put them in. That's what I
Mhm.
was doing. It was the wild, wild west for me. I had no fear. It's just like, I was just out there, wild. But put some offers in, just start putting offers in, and see what happens. But you have to know how to write those offers, right? So you need to know how to write them up so you can, make sure you're coming out with a positive cash flow.
Mhm.
So just put some offers out there, and then when they come back, because you will, because it's real estate is a numbers game. It is number, and I'm all about numbers, right? So I was like, oh, I could do this, So I just count my numbers. I got to look at so many properties to get so many, to put so many offers in to get so many responses. Because if you just do the numbers and put the offers out there, somebody's going to say, yes, I'll take your offer. And then you can negotiate from there. So I think those would be the top things. Just go for it.
Yeah, okay, this is good. So as you were speaking, I was writing down a couple of things that counterbalance of what you were sharing. So the first order of business, just like in if you were to buy a house for yourself, you need to determine how much you can afford, right? So that way you don't bite off more than you can chew. And so maybe come under a little bit because the market sometimes, it's it can go bottom up, right? And so, we experienced that in 2008. Everybody was on this high, 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 and then the market just crashed.
Yep.
So you don't want to get into something over your head, and then you end up not being able to afford it, and it goes in foreclosure or what have you. So once you determine how much you can afford, then you take that information and then you go and find a property. And then my recommendation. So what I did, I knew that I did not want to be a landlord, right? So I I decided to go with a property manager. And so I had my property manager. Once I found the property, we started advertising that townhouse that I was building. We started advertising before the property was even finished.
Oh,
And so
wow.
people like new, right? So people like new. So the fact that we could advertise, we had a brand new construction townhouse and people were willing to pay a premium because it was new. And so we had somebody locked in even before I closed on my townhouse. So the benefit for me as a real estate agent, I got paid off of that transaction. So I was paid a commission. And so the way I've done my commissions on those properties that I buy in my real estate business name is I call that seed money. So I put that money to the side. So if anything goes wrong with that property, I have money that I can go to without tapping into my personal money, finances to do any repairs. So again, so determine how much you can afford, find the property, determine what the rents are in the area. So even though you might get a good deal, you may only be able to get 550 for rent. So that might be just barely enough to cover your mortgage. So assess the area with the rental market and what people are willing to pay. The idea is to buy low or have a low mortgage, but to have high rent. And people need a place to stay. And again, as long as you don't want to charge people high rent just because you can charge them high rent. Give them a nice place to live, and then they'll be willing to pay the premium. And then it'll cover your costs, and you'll be able to put money, build your wealth, opportunity to build your wealth. And for, like I said, and for me, I used a property manager. It was the path of least resistance for me. I did not want to have to be face to face with a tenant if they did not pay and having to go to the magistrate. And I didn't have the time. At the time, I had a corporate job. So I did not have the bandwidth to add that on too as a property manager. And it's worked out for me. And they do all my advertising and they find my tenants. And when I talk to people and they want to know about investing, when I mention to them a property manager, I think the assumption is that it's an expensive it's an expensive amenity, and it's really not. And then when I tell them, oh, I only pay like $125 out of they take out of your rent money. To me, that's well worth it if the tenant's
Yeah,
not paying.
absolutely.
They have the job of getting them out. So that's one of the things that I counted my cost and was worth me spending that extra $100 to have a property manager to manage my property. So, so is that one, two, three? Determine what you can afford, find your
Hmm.
property, determine the area for the rental cost in the area,
Hmm.
move forward, close on the property, get your tenant, get your property manager,
Yep.
and start your wealth
Yep.
building.
Yep. And you pointed out something very important, Pamela. You got to count the cost, right? Um, the Bible talks about how can you start building a house without first counting the cost. So one of the things that the training taught me is how to count how to do the numbers. Like, like Pamela said, you don't want to end up in foreclosure. So in other words, there's some due diligence that has to be done even before because you got to know what you're going to put an offer in. And for me, um, the asset class I chose was apartment buildings because when I initially the training that I studied from was all about single family homes.
Mhm.
But then when I stumbled across apartments and how the leverage you get, when if you have 100 units and then you increase the rent by $10, that's
Mhm.
$10,000. So it's like, oh, that math works. The math is mathing for
Yep.
me with the apartments, and then you don't have to run all over the place trying to service the tenants. You can just one building. You just go to one location and you just service that one location. And regarding property management, we that was far from our even concept was property manager. We at the time, my ex-husband, he was into all that stuff. So he was the landlord. He was the landlord and I was the business manager behind. So he was the front seat on the front, dealt with, he loved it. He's a people person. He loved dealing with the tenants. And I didn't want to have anything to do with the tenants. So I screened them well, and I did all the back office stuff while he did the front office stuff. And so I didn't have anything to do with the tenants, but I learned a lot from him in terms of working with the tenants and dealing with the tenants. And sometimes I did meet a few. I did the initial, because I was an agent, I actually did the screening, finding a tenant, screening them, giving them the application, meeting them in person once they signed the lease. So I did all the leasing part when it came to finding a good tenant. And we had some good tenants. And also because the building was so tall, it was such a tall building that we got contacted by telecom companies, Nextel. They say,
Mhm.
hey, your building is pretty tall. It sits on a high hill.
Mhm.
It'd be a great location for our cell towers to put us. We said, absolutely. Well, how much you talking? And
Exactly.
so that wasn't in my training how to negotiate with cell towers. So we took whatever they gave us. And well, actually, my ex-husband, he was a great negotiator. He squeezed every penny out of them. But then we didn't know that was going to open the door for other cell towers to come. Then T-Mobile came right after, and then Verizon came. And by the time Verizon came, we was cutting some big checks. And those antennas was paying for the antennas alone was worth way more than the
Yeah.
apartment. So and then they increase every year their rents, and they pay their taxes as well. Um, they so the rents so they had automatic rent increase, and it was a 30-year lease. It
Mhm.
renewed every 5 years. The auto renew every 5 years. And even these, again, this was something God blessed us with. We didn't even know about this. Then you had people coming around want to buy those leases. So we actually had people
Mhm.
that buy that income stream from those leases, present us with offers and things like that. So that was like new tenants, that we didn't really have, that was living outside, paying a heck of a lot of money
That is,
just to sit
listen,
on yeah.
so you found a opportunity within opportunity.
God did
I
that
mean,
by the grace
yes,
of God. There goes I,
amen.
by the grace
Amen.
of God.
And I'm looking at a quote that Warren Buffett stated: "If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die."
Absolutely, absolutely. And and when those antennas came along, Pamela, my ex-husband, he was like, I don't need to work. I don't need to keep this good. And when I first met him, it was so funny. He said, I'm never quitting my job. This is the post office. This is an easy job. This is good money, good pension, good all this stuff. Man, once those antennas came along, he said deuces. So I was the one working. So things flipped. So I was in my corporate job, working, climbing up the ladder. And he was home we had it with the kids, so, and plus he was the landlord. So he was
Mhm.
a full-time property manager. And I was a corporate girly trying to climb it was my cash flow. My corporate job was my cash flow. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And that's good. So let's talk about that for a second because some
Hmm.
people use the resources that you have, right? So if you have a
Hmm.
corporate job, it's going to be easier to qualify because you have a W-2. And so you don't have to come up with your returns and all these things. And that's fine if you have to do that and that's your preference of showing your income. But I know for myself, it made it a lot easier. I didn't have to show any of my real estate money, right? Because my
Hmm.
corporate job took care of showing that I could afford to make these purchases. And so that's good that we had that. And so now that, we've made this transition out of our corporate jobs, those businesses are now working for us, or those apartments and those townhouses and those single family things that we have are now working for us. And so if you can start those ventures while you have your corporate job, and so if you decide to make a transition out, then you would already have some things working on your behalf before you
100%.
made that transition outside of corporate.
100%. And I believe you just said what separates us from your average investor, right? Our perspective of our corporate jobs versus our real estate money. I believe we both saw that this was the real this was the real money over here. You know, this job, it can come and go. But this money over here, oh, this money is not going anywhere unless, like you said, Pam, unless you sell it and stuff like that. And so fast forward, I did buy a few more apartment buildings after being divorced. But now I'm into something even more fancy. I'm into apartment syndication. And meaning, what does that mean? That means that typically, I would go in, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. I would go in single-handedly buying apartment buildings. Before I was with my ex-husband, but now I do it by myself. And I take, they call it takedown. I'll take down a unit by myself because of all the years of experience and knowledge and stuff like that. But I was introduced to apartment syndication, which is, bring on some investors with you who you share the wealth with them instead of instead of me single-handedly taking them down and getting all the profits, just share it with others. So if you want to get in on an apartment deal, so now I'm taking down bigger deals, way bigger deals, what in part what investors who they want the income, the passive income from real estate, but they don't want the day-to-day headache. They don't want, and I do have property managers now, but they don't want the day-to-day, because I can't even hang up it's so weird because one of my fears about getting back into it by myself was I can't even hang a picture. I have zero skills when it comes to doing things around the house. I grew up with a bunch of brothers and they did everything, even my ex-husband, he did everything. So I didn't have the need to be handy with anything. So I am not your handy girl. So I definitely got property managers who run my properties, but now I do apartment syndication where I bring on investors who they want that income. They may be a corporate person and they want to because a lot of corporate people, they only invest in stocks. Like, again, what makes us different? A lot of
Mhm.
corporate people only invest in the stock market. They're mutual funds and all that. They only invest in notes. But real wealth comes from three class assets. You need real assets, which is real estate or some kind of either real estate, some kind of business or something. You need a real asset.
Mhm.
Then you need some paper assets, which is the stock market and stuff like that. And then you need it's real paper, whatever, the third one. But it's yeah, so you got the real assets, which real estate, you have the stock market, and a business. Sorry, that was it. A business. You need a business, right?
Mhm.
So imagine having all three, right? You imagine having all three. I mean, you're really strengthening your wealth portfolio. And,
Absolutely.
and again, if you read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, that's a good start. But there's a whole bunch of other books that can help you in turn. So what makes us different, Pamela, I believe, is because we saw that you needed both. You needed a source of income that can feed your investments, and then long term. And as you can see now with the state of the market, where a lot of people lost their jobs, that's all they have is their stock market portfolio. And right now, some of those portfolios are not looking good. So what I like to do is say, hey, you can take some of that money and invest it in real estate by partnering with someone like myself
Mhm.
who can find deals where you can come in and get an annual interest rate or a quarterly interest rate check as well. Once the deal, usually you take a property, you fix it up, and then you either
Mhm.
refinance it or sell it. And so upon the sale of the property, you get a share of the equity as well. So I mean, usually once people start buying into apartment syndications or any syndications when it comes to real estate, they're quickly they don't want their money. They make more money in those real assets than they do
Mhm.
in their paper assets, and they want to constantly keep their money in that because it makes sense. I mean, long term, there is some risk. Now, mind you,
Yes,
there's nothing is
absolutely.
100%
Risk
foolproof,
free.
but
Mhm.
to minimize your risk, you want to make sure that you lay yourself with, again, information with people who know what they're doing, and then also experience. So I don't know, Pamela, what you got? What you want to say?
100% agree with you. And, and so like what you're talking about, Debbie, and the things that you've gotten into, like apartment buildings, that may be overwhelming, right, for someone. And so, for someone who's like, I want an apartment building, that's my 5-year term, my 5-year goal, but I don't have the resources to do that now. So I wrote down a couple of things, right? So, you can get into apartment buildings if that's your desire. But if that's too big for you, start with a single family house, start with a townhouse, a duplex, a triplex, a quad. There's other opportunities for you to get in and build until you get to the apartment building level where Debbie is. So I desired it to get there as well, to the apartment building level, but I'm taking it slow based on my comfort level, right? And so, and I love that you mentioned how, in the corporate jobs, we were able to learn about investments in terms of stocks and mutual funds and index funds. That's something that I have long loved to do. And so that also helped me build my portfolio. So you're not only working with these outside investments, properties, but you also have your 401ks or your stocks or whatever you like to invest in, which helps again build your portfolio. So when you go to a bank or a lender and you say, well, here's my portfolio, here's my wealth, my well, what's the word? I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but essentially just showing that you have the available resources to go and pursue these different ventures that you have. And so, in fact, today I found a triplex that I'm going to go look at, that I'm interested in, and I don't know a lot about it other than it's new construction. And for me, I like new construction because I don't have to go and take additional resources to go and fix up, right? And so that allows me to come in with the least amount of cost, and then and just and hopefully it's in the area where I can maximize my rents as well. And the other thing about going with new construction, especially with my first property, I did that because the builder was paying my closing costs. So again, it was minimum outlay other than my down payment. And so, going back to our last episode where we had lenders on, and we encourage our audience to go back and listen to that, they talked about how you can live in a duplex or a triplex and get an FHA loan as long as you lived within one of the units, and then you can rent out the other one, and you won't have to put down that 20% down payment that most people get afraid of, because when they hear 20% down payment of $300,000, that's a lot of money. But if you can go in and live in one of those units and then rent out the other ones, then you aren't subject to that 20% down. So there's ways around purchasing an investment property without having to come out that 20% outlay.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. So financing, I love that you're on the finance topic. So definitely go back and watch that financing video we did, because they gave all the tea on financing your deals. And so, because finance is key, because I know a lot of, like I said, when I started, I was broke. I didn't even have a job. My ex-husband was the one who was making the money. I was, eventually I went back to work, but um so financing is key, right? And there's creative financing.
Hmm.
And when I did my training and learning about real estate, I was heavy on the creative because I didn't have anything. I was starting from literally starting from the bottom. And so knowing how to do creative financing when you can't do the traditional finance is going to be key if you want to operate in the in the investment world. But you got to be careful with that because some people get over leveraged. Once they see the power of their leverage, they get over leveraged and get themselves turned upside down. I've seen people do it. I've seen people who get in and do the house hacking, like Pamela just described, get a 2.5 family. They live on one of the apartments and then they refinance. I mean, the person got way over leveraged and end up getting foreclosed and end up getting homeless. So you have to do your due diligence. You have to do your numbers, run your numbers and see what's the best and worst case scenario. But finance is going to be key. Forming relationships with finance people like Stanley and Kina that we met with. They told you all the strategies. They can, if partnering with when you don't have the money, they can show you how to get the money in a safe and a healthy way. So you're definitely going to need to partner with a finance person. Right now, at the level that I'm working at, my banker, you'll have a banker when you get to my level. She invited me to a light show at the ballpark, and it was a meet and greet. We were in a suite, and it was just all this food and all the drinks. I mean, so once you get to a level where people call you up and invite you to, the money people call you up and invite you to events, that means you've arrived. You've
Right.
arrived.
That's right. Right. But that's how you build those relationships, going to those meet and greets and the Chamber of Commerce and things. And I personally need to do better with, attending those Chamber of Commerce events and things like that. Because again, those where relationships are built and those are where the deals happen. And so just giving myself the time, the bandwidth to go and do those sessions and meet people and build. And so people know who you are. So, for me, I started after I left one of the other, I was at two brokerage firms before I started my own. And so now I have the Madison Martino Real Estate Group. And so now I am building my own entity. And so, I've done a lot of marketing over the summer and looking to, do more this fall. I'm sorry, this spring, going into the spring and really getting more presence out there. So I have signs and things like that. So again, building those relationships. So I've have gotten calls because I had that custom build home that you know about, and I put a sign out front, and so people when they see something that nice, they're interested in how did they do it. And so again, feeding people that information and giving people, because when people see custom homes, they think that potentially that they can't even afford it. And so when you walk people through the process of custom building, it's not as expensive as you may think it is. So anyway, again, building those relationships, getting connected. When you work with a real estate agent or someone who is entrenched into the real estate business as Debbie is and as I am, we have those relationships. And so we can partner you with our lenders and the people that have helped our clients and or who have helped us individually, help you achieve your goals, right? And so we're here, as we said from the very beginning, to help people, to help our listeners to
Absolutely.
build wealth, to people who have these visions on the inside of them, vision creators, right? Who we are.
Absolutely, family.
We are here to help people pursue their goals, their dreams, and make them become a reality.
Absolutely. So, Pamela, quick question.
Mhm.
So, tax, we didn't touch on tax.
You.
How has owning property helped you in the tax arena? Has any benefits come from owning property? Any tax
Yeah,
filters?
that
Tax.
taxes is a touchy one because for a long time I had a dual career. I had my corporate job, and I had real estate, and I was doing really well in both sectors. And so, although having my own business helped, it did not eliminate. And so it's still, you still may have a tax liability just based on you know, your livelihood and how much you produce. But my goal is always to make the most money in anything I'm putting my hands to, right? And so I did not shrink down in my corporate job or shrink down in my real estate business because I had one or the other. My goal is to make the most money in the corporate job that I had and in real estate. And that is not, I should say that. So my goal, of course, is to maximize profit, but when you're good at what you do and helping people, the money comes. We talked about that earlier, Debbie. The money comes, right?
Absolutely.
You don't go and chase the money chases you, because
Absolutely.
ultimately, one of those questions that most people are asked, what would you do for free? Real estate is what I would do for free because
Yes.
I get the enjoyment that I get to serve God's people, right? And
Amen.
so that he trusted me to serve people, to help them, and that I'm looking for the best deal for my clients. And out of that sincerity, the money comes, right?
Amen.
And so the taxes have helped. I mean, the having the business has helped in taxes because I'm an LLC and I'm also an S corp, so that helps. But again, because when you have dual incomes and a husband, so you really three incomes, it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily always put you in the best tax situation.
Yeah.
However, I'm thankful.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, 100%. Definitely taxes, you get depreciation, right?
Yes.
That's something you don't get when you're just a W-2 person. You get depreciation, you get appreciation, right?
Hmm.
But you don't pay for that later. You get all kinds of things that you would never see just as a W-2 person. I mean, it could if you're a corporate girly like we were, it can offset a lot of that W-2 income. It can offset quite a bit, especially if you're a real estate professional as well. You know, you get even more. You get bonus depreciation. I mean, there's so many things that you can do, and there's so many things that you can structure your real estate business to minimize your taxes. So you get huge tax breaks, huge tax breaks to offset. And that's great when you, like Pamela said, when you're a dual or triple income family, then you're going to need to also, you want to minimize your capital gain. So having real estate and having real estate as your source of income is actually a big win for your income, your earned income. So even if you don't have a job, having real estate as your source of income can really hugely offset your taxes significantly. And I have twins, and they didn't have anything to claim on their taxes, and they were complaining about their checks. Mom, all this taxes. Like, you get a business, get some real estate. So one of my twins, he bought a condo in Brooklyn. I think it's Bedside. I can't remember, but he said, "Mom, I'm getting all this I'm getting all this interest back on my tax." He's so excited now because now he can take, and he's a high income earner, and now he can take the tax deductions because he has some real estate. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so
No, that's really good. And again, it helps. It does not eliminate. It
yes,
enhances, but not eliminate.
absolutely,
So, but
100%.
yes, for sure, because it would probably be a worse
It'll be
proposition.
worse. Oh yeah, especially if you don't have kids, or if you don't have, like a lot of millennials or young. I think it is millennials now, right? Or we have some
Gen
ones,
Z, Gen
Gen
Z.
Zs. Yeah, they're coming out the gate, especially in the technology field, they're making a ton of money, and they have nothing to offset it with. And so, I always encourage, especially my children, you got to get something to offset that cash flow.
Yeah.
The real estate is. I think, did we cover everything, Pamela? Are we
Yeah, that's what I was
good?
thinking as well. Oh, here's a question. Here's a question that maybe we could bring. What makes a deal a hard no for you? Are you presented with any kind of deals that you're like, not for me?
Yeah. So for me, I try to be unbiased in meeting. I let the numbers speak for themselves. So again, that's why I say you have to do your due diligence
Yeah.
and take the emotion out of it and just look at the numbers. Is this still going to cash flow for me? Is it going to come out? Am I going to have to come out my pocket to get this deal? If I have to come out, if the numbers tell me I'm a negative cash flow, and I have to come out my pocket to think, first I'm going to try to negotiate. I'm going to try to negotiate to get it into a positive cash flow scenario, especially if they really want to sell it. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's on, game on. Now it's time to negotiate and try to, if it's a good deal, like if the once you can make the numbers work and it cash flows, and because I like to buy undervalued properties that I can add value to them and fix them up,
Mhm.
and then either well, I typically buy and hold, refinance them, and then to buy other properties, cash out
Mhm.
and buy other
Yeah,
properties, and just keep this cycle going. Because once you
exactly.
start getting this cycle of buying properties, you're going to get in the rhythm where you're just going to keep going. You're just going to keep buying the next one and buying the next one.
Yeah.
So if the cash flow is negative cash flow, I'll negotiate it. If I can't negotiate it, then it's a pass. It's a quick pass for me.
Yeah, that's good that because you just said something. So you could cash out, but you got to be careful about the capital gains. And there's something called a
Absolutely.
1031 exchange that you can
Absolutely.
you can take instead of cashing out and inheriting, not inheriting, but just being taxed with the capital gains, you can do a 1031 exchange where you can take those proceeds and then go buy something else and roll that money into that. So there's ways of getting around that, those capital gains in selling a property. But the idea is to build a portfolio. And it's okay if your portfolio is only two or three, but it just depends on what your goals are. You could sell off one and buy a better, maybe it's a better proposition for you. And then you just, again, do that 1031 exchange. I would definitely recommend you talk to an attorney to get all the details of how a 1031, if it's a benefit for you to use a 1031 or not. I don't want to get into that and start trying to give out legal advice because that is outside of my realm. But yes, that's good. In mentioning that you can sell off and then buy another one.
Yeah. And then also, so even though we didn't talk about the other asset class, I'm very familiar with them. Like I said, even before I started apartment buildings, I looked into the other asset class, as well as even now I'm surrounded by people who do all the other stuff, such as the fix and flip. Again, I can't fix anything. So that's why it's like, even though the apartment buildings I buy, I have to do some form of
Yeah.
fix. So I do work with contractors.
Yep.
I do know how to assess. Before I didn't, I was absolute, because again, I couldn't even. So I was overpaying for everything, but I actually took a class where with a contractor who walk you through buildings, and he teaches you how to assess the cost of the renovation cost. So now I got that down really well now, and so now I can assess the cost and know how to negotiate. Before, again, I was clueless, didn't know what I was doing, but now I know very well. So I do fix and flip. So you can buy a house and flip. You can buy a house for, and there's many different ways you can buy a
Yeah.
house. I mean, we didn't talk about tax lien. I know how to, I
Mm.
got into tax lien certificates. I bought a few tax liens. So you can buy a house through a tax auction. You can get it for like, whatever the taxes are, 10 grand. It could be $100,000 house. You can get it for 10 grand at the auction and refinance it and then cash out, either hold it, cash out and get the difference, or sell it and sell it for 100, do a little repairs, fix it up, sell it for 100. So a lot of people get properties through the tax office. So
Sure.
or you can do wholesaling where you just get a paper, get a property, lock it down on paper, and then get an end buyer and pass it to him and make a split, make it like a $10,000-$20,000 profit off of that. Or you can do fix and flip. You can do a BRRRR strategy, BRRR, which is you buy it, you renovate it, or you rehab it, you refinance it, and you repeat the process all over again. So you could just continue to do that strategy. You can buy commercial units. My properties are mixed use. There's some meaning that is residential and it's commercial, meaning I have beauty salon, uh, grocery store, spot. So where I have tenants that are commercial tenants. So, or you could just do all multifamily. You could do multifamily, and these are different classes. You can
Right.
do, so you can do, like I said, did I miss anything, Pamela? I think I covered them
No, I
all.
think you got it all. I think you covered it
Yeah,
all, and some, and some, and
and
some.
some, and
And
some.
definitely, I think we encourage our listeners to go back and watch the shifting in finance with our lenders, Kina,
Mm-hmm.
and Stanley, and that will help them take our information and then apply
Absolutely.
the lending piece of it, and then they'll be ready to go, move forward. So they put those two, this conversation and the lending piece together, and then they can move forward in the process of going to go find their own properties. And maybe one day they
Absolutely.
could join us and talk about how we maybe helped
Absolutely.
them and gave them the courage to do it. But yes, just be encouraged to do it. Just do it. You can do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Start. You
Absolutely.
got to start somewhere, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And before this call, we actually talked about maybe getting a cohort of people who are interested in real estate. They want somebody, they want a mentor, they want some. I think I'm open to it. Pamela, would you be open
I am
to?
open to absolutely.
Yeah, so we can put together a cohort team of people and walk them, hold their hand one by one, and help them to buy. I'm actually looking at properties in Maryland as well, even though I'm in Pennsylvania. My properties are in Jersey, but I'm actually looking at some apartment buildings in Maryland. So, if you think about, hey, I'm ready, but I'm scared, but I don't want to take the risk. I want to do it. We're considering putting together a cohort and walking them through some training and be their personal support to help them get their first deal. It could be in Charlotte, it could be in what
South
area,
Carolina,
sir?
North
South,
Carolina, and South
North
Carolina.
Carolina,
Yep.
South Carolina. It could be in the cat, even if you don't live there. We can
Yep,
still
that's
help
right.
you. We can
That's
still
right.
help you structure the deal, put the deal together, and get the deal. So So make sure, just if you're interested, just reach out to us. Our information will be in the show notes, and we would love to work with you.
Absolutely. This has been amazing. This has been amazing. And again, I think we're achieving our goals every time we open up this podcast and talk to people and helping people and giving people hopefully outlook of this could be, they can do it. It's not just for you and me, but it's also for them as well. And so, as people reach out to us and we build our cohort, we can bring people through that process. And, at the end of the day, they can share their story and they'll have a success
Absolutely.
story and how they purchased their first investment property. So I'm so grateful for this time.
Absolutely. Well, it's been fun, Pamela. What
It's
about
been
you? Was it
fun.
good for you?
All right.
Was it good for you as it
It
was
was
for me?
good. And until next time,
Until
thank you
next
so
time,
much
people.
for
God bless.
listening in to Vision Creator Podcast and from corporate to creator. And
Mhm.
we'll talk again soon. Thanks.